Hi YouTube, back with another reaction video. So we're watching X-Men Origins. Wolverine came out 2009, 17 years ago. I have not seen this movie in a really long time, like super long, probably 17 years ago. It was the last time I seen this movie. I do want to say thank you to everyone who is watching these videos. I appreciate it. Cause we're getting these to like 100 views on these videos, and I know to like some like that's like nothing still, but like I'm still like a really small content creator, you know. So I'm like 100 plus views is it's pretty damn good to me. But okay, let's start.
To new rock stars, I'm Eric Boss, and this is a breakdown of X-Men Origins Wolverine, the fourth installment of our X-Men Snick rewatch, as we break down all 13 of the Fox X-Men and Deadpool films ahead of Wolverine's Mutant Homecoming and Deadpool 3 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As the first X-Men film to release after the dawn of the MCU, Origins represents a departure from the three preceding X-Men films, but it set Wolverine on his own odd trajectory, leading to Logan in his coming rematch with Ryan Reynolds' Wade Wilson, which begins in this movie. So let's break down X-Men Origins Wolverine scene by scene. Okay, this is the first X-Men film where the X in the opening 20th Century Fox logo does not linger longer than the other letters. It's our first indication that this movie is gonna be a bit different from the previous ones. David Benioff, co-creator of Game of Thrones, was one of the writers of this film, along with Skip Woods, who wrote Swordfish, which starred Hugh Jackman and Halle Berry.
I love Game of Thrones.
We open on the Northwest Territories, Canada, 1845, on Victor Creed, young Sabretooth, whittling his long fingernails into sharp claws as he sits at the bedside of his friend James Howlett, who hasn't yet adopted the name Logan or Wolverine. James is played by Troye Sivan, a Canadian actor and singer-songwriter who rose to fame on YouTube, recently parodied by Timothy Chalamet on Saturday Night Live. I know, Troye Sivan! Cody Smith-McPhee actually was originally cast in this role, but it conflicted with him shooting The Road. Actually, Cody Smith-McPhee would later play Nightcrawler in X-Men Apocalypse before freaking us out in The Power of Dog. So told here, this is 1845, and considering the first X-Men movie came out in 2000 and was set in a not too distant future, which we think was somewhere around 2003, that would make Logan around 150 years old when we first met him in that movie. Indeed, older than you, Professor, and older than Hank McCoy when he called him boy in The Last Stand. We see a silhouette picture of a Wolverine on the wall next to the bed. As John dotes on James, Victor gives the exchange the stink eye. He seems to know, or at least suspect, that his own dad, who would never dote on him like this, is actually James's biological father. And right on cue, Thomas Logan shows up, hollering away. In the comics, he was a drunk who abused his son, Dog. Victor is taking the place of Dog Logan here, and it's probably why he later says that his dad deserved what he got. The trauma of seeing his father, John, die is what causes James's mutant powers to manifest for the first time, so that he will never get sick like this again, and his claws have emerged. This is where he learns that Thomas Logan is his biological father. In X2, Pyro told Bobby's parents that males carry and pass on the mutant gene, and while this is never confirmed in the comics or the movies, the fact that both Thomas's sons are mutants gives it some credibility. James's claws are bone claws, not yet encased in or fused with adamantium. In the woods, right before Victor tells James that they're brothers, James notices Victor's now sharp fingernails. So we get this great montage over the opening credits. Sabretooth was played by Tyler Mane in the first X-Men, but he was recast now to Liev Schreiber. When Schreiber was initially cast, some people were a little wary about whether or not he was big enough to play the role. He's 6'3", but whereas Mane was a wrestler with a wrestler's build, Schreiber definitely wasn't. He recently described talking with Hugh Jackman after getting the role.
I went to Hugh and I said, there's a suit, right? And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, cause you know, the muscles and everything, that's not real, is it? And he's like, oh, mate, you gotta work out.
Schreiber ended up training with Jackman and gaining 40 pounds for the role.
Damn.
In another interview, he said, I started this program, this 4-month weightlifting chicken genocide that was really intense, and I hope I never have to do it again. Victor and James fight over many decades through several wars, and I love how the montage uses them running as transitions.
Keep on running. Don't look back.
In the 1860s, they fight in the American Civil War on the Union side because they were from Canada. Victor now has facial hair very similar to his father's. Bullets have no effect on either of them, and even a cannonball blasts James in the chest. And then on that, boom, boom, we are now in World War I in the trenches. The two are now fighting back to back in a move that they will revisit throughout the movie. And then they're fighting in World War II, James chomping down on Wolverine's signature cigar in a D-Day invasion at Normandy. Now, in the comics, Wolverine and Captain America had some World War II adventures together. This movie came out in 2009, while the first Captain America film was in development at Marvel Studios. That movie considered including cameos of Wolverine as a POW in Nazi-occupied France,
I mean,
but
we
that
watched
never came to be,
all
as
of
Marvel
it.
Studios looks to include their own version
All
of
of Captain
X-Men in the
America's,
MCU continuity. Perhaps the trickiest
all
part is
of
going to be including the
Thor's,
classic origin of
Guardians of the
characters like Magneto
Galaxy,
as a World War II Holocaust survivor. If the present day of the MCU is now supposed to be sometime in the mid to late
Avenger
2020s,
movies.
Magneto would have to be at least in his late 80s. But it could be that just a version of the X-Men history could have existed in the MCU, but maybe Wanda Maximoff put everyone in a post-House of M, No More Mutants reality warp. I'm kind of working on a theory video about this currently. And also should remember, in the year 2009, X-Men Origins Wolverine was not the only superhero movie to include opening titles that placed gritty superheroes in real-world 20th century history, because a few months before this film released, Zack Snyder's Watchmen would open with an R-rated version of this very same concept, even down to the image of the comedian with a cigar in Vietnam, and the comedian, like Victor does in this montage, attacking a Vietnamese woman. This one with Wolverine and Sabretooth totally holds up. It's awesome to see. After surviving the firing squad, Logan and Victor are kept shackled in this sturdy cell. From the hash marks on the wall, they have been here for a month. Major William Stryker introduces himself. He was played by Brian Cox in X2, and here, since he's younger, he's played by Danny Houston. By X2, Stryker had worked his way up to the position of Colonel. Stryker is adapted from Reverend Stryker in the comics, who's a religious fanatic and televangelist that writer Chris Claremont based on Jerry Falwell Sr. Apparently, Brian Cox had expressed interest in reprising the role for this film using the same de-aging technology that they'd used on Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen in The Last Stand, but this was deemed too expensive to pull off. Notice there's a rat playing on Victor, which shows him as a more animalistic creature than Logan is. Director Gavin Hood stated that the theme of the film is Wolverine trying to balance the animal aspect of the self with the human aspect. Victor shows what happens when someone like Wolverine embraces the animal over the human. On the wall behind Victor, a smiley face scratched into it. He no doubt did this with his long, disgusting nail claws, like the smiley face he will claw into the bar top later. Now remember, in X2, when Charles Xavier pointed out that for someone who hates mutants, Stryker keeps some strange company, Stryker responded, "They serve their purpose, as long as they can be controlled." And here, he recruits these guys for a mission.
Putting together a special team with special privileges. Now tell me, how would you like to really serve your country?
Yes, shades of Nick Fury recruiting Tony Stark, building a team. But notice the reactions of both men as Stryker makes his pitch.
You boys tired of running? Tired of denying your true nature?
What do you care?
Oh, I care. I care because I know how special you are. How valuable.
Stryker is manipulating them from
He
minute
like,
one, and when
nigga.
he tells them that they're special, Victor perks up almost hopefully, whereas James sighs and practically rolls his eyes. Victor was raised with an abusive father, whereas James was raised with a loving one. So James knows what genuine care looks like, and he knows this ain't it. Victor just wants a daddy figure to tell him that he's special, and this is what lets Stryker know that he's gonna be the easier one of the two to outright manipulate. The guys join the Special Task Force Team X. We actually first hear Wade Wilson's blades as the camera lingers on James, and notice that the noise of him sharpening his blade sounds a lot like Wolverine's adamantium claws anytime they come out.
Right, so
In the comics, Team X was made up.
so that was Deadpool right there, and it would be like the whole time. I was like, oh wow, like that nigga was right there like the whole time. So they considered Deadpool movies part of the X-Men franchise as well too, because that's also included in like all these movies.
Of Wolverine and Victor Creed and a few others, but here
Which
it
makes
consists of
sense.
Wolverine, Sabretooth, Wade Wilson, played by Ryan Reynolds, a skilled swordsman who later becomes this movie's regrettable Deadpool, Agent Zero, aka Maverick from the comics, an expert marksman, played by Daniel Henney, John Wraith, a teleporter, played by Will I Am,
Oh my God, I forgot he was
Fred
in here.
Dukes, aka The Blob, played by Kevin Durand, and Chris Bradley, aka Bolt, with powers of electric current manipulation, played by Dominic Monaghan, who had a banger of a few years coming off of Lost and the Lord of the Rings films. Ryan Reynolds was super passionate about the Deadpool character, and when he heard Wade Wilson was going to be in this movie, he asked to play the part. Apparently, at the time, he was one of only 2 stars to ever be cast in a Marvel movie without auditioning, the other one being Wesley Snipes as Blade. His role was originally just going to be a cameo, but it was made bigger once Reynolds came on board. Will.i.am got this role in the film because he had said he wanted to play a mutant with abilities similar to Nightcrawler. John Wraith is actually one of the more faithful comic-to-movie members of Team X. He has similar teleportation powers to his comic book self, and he looks pretty similar, even rocking his trademark cowboy hat. The Blob is eating during this flight, setting up his weight gain later on. He's a big X-Men villain who has indestructible skin and is actually in league with Magneto. Kevin Durand, like Dominic Monaghan, was known during these years for his role on Lost as the cruel Kimi. David Harbour actually had a meeting to play this role, but apparently the producers saw him without a shirt on and they were like worried for his health. David Harbour later joked, "I was too fat to play the Blob." Stryker tells
What?
Bradley to take the plane down.
Are you gonna puke? we were meant to fly would grow wings.
Several characters of the X-Men universe have the ability to fly, including Angel, who we saw with his white wings in The Last Stand. Agent Zero says,
Don't worry, Nancy, more people die driving than flying.
How about from impaling?
foreshadowing Zero's death later on, right after his helicopter crashes. The team sits down in Lagos, Nigeria. Yes, this city was the same location in Captain America Civil War, where Wanda Maximoff accidentally blew up a building during a mission, an event that the UN used as an excuse to pass the Sokovia Accords. And everyone shows off their powers as they make it into this building. The elevator music is Tie a Yellow Ribbon Around the Old Oak Tree, which is a song about someone who has done their time in the military and wants to know if he'll be welcomed home by his love, telling her to tie a yellow ribbon around the tree so he'll know if he should get off the bus or move on. And yes, a cutaway to super people in an elevator, a gag we saw in Spider-Man 2, and we would later see in Spider-Man No Way Home. Meanwhile, Wade runs his mouth, as he always does.
You're up next.
Thank you, sir. You look really nice today. It's the green. Brings out the seriousness.
Yes, gotta watch all the Spider-Man movies.
No.
Or the breakdowns.
It's cool to see how many of his acting choices for this first appearance as Wade Wilson that Ryan Reynolds will carry on to his eventual solo films as Deadpool. The fast clip talking, deadpan sarcasm, the instant comebacks, and we get to see an awesome sequence of his sword work, which ends with him slicing a bullet in half so that it kills two guys behind him. Now, I have a feeling a lot of the moves from this movie might get called back in Deadpool 3, as it is technically the first time Logan and Wade meet on screen, and while I'm sure a lot of these moves will be jokes, this move here is legit, and I hope it comes back, because it's pretty cool. Stryker lays the groundwork for Wade's appearance at the end of the film.
You didn't have that mouth on you, Wade. You'd be the perfect soldier.
So the actor playing the man in charge of the Diamond operation is Hakeem Kai Kazim, another
he do got a smart ass mouth. Oh my god.
Chaka in the animated Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. So when Stryker goes to the small village, the villager says the rock he's been asking about came from the sky, and James says that the man that they're questioning is telling the truth. In the comics, Wolverine is basically a lie detector. He uses his heightened senses to hear an increased heartbeat and observe other signs of someone trying to lie to him, kind of like Daredevil does. And of course, adamantium is made from mixing steel with what, kids? Vibranium, which comes from meteorites like the one Stryker is seeking out. So the word vibranium is not spoken in this movie. That's what this meteorite is made out of. When James quits the team, he takes off his dog tags and throws them down in disgust. He'll later get replacement tags that read Wolverine, the ones we saw him with when he first appeared in X-Men. A deleted scene would have shown a young Storm, Aurora Monroe, here as one of the villagers.
Oh wow.
Jimmy!
Was that not in the movie?
Now, again, X-Men Origins Wolverine came out when Kevin Feige's independent Marvel Studios was still in its phase 1, discovering that their $500 million loan from Merrill Lynch to fund Iron Man was paying off in spades. But among the characters that they put up as collateral to
that's
Merrill
a
Lynch
lot of money for a fucking movie budget.
And Kevin Feige wanted to introduce Black Panther earlier in the MCU, but the Marvel CEO at the time, Ike Perlmutter, didn't believe that black and female superheroes could sell as toys, and he shut him down, which was stupid. But at the time, Marvel Studios was an independent studio and could have partnered with Fox. Before Disney bought them, they considered a future team up with the studio. So along with these World War II parallels between Cap and Wolverine, there were some hopes back years that Fox's X-Men continuity might have been able to give Marvel Studios an opportunity to set up things like Wakanda and Black Panther. So cut to the Canadian Rockies 6 years later. Assuming Logan spent a few years on Team X after 1973, this would put us in the early 80s. But for a movie presenting itself as a period piece, there doesn't seem to be much of a budget for period-specific props and costumes. Most of the film is like set in remote areas. James is now going by Logan, which was the last name of his biological father, and he's working as a lumberjack and living with Kayla Silverfox, played by Lynn Collins. In the Wolverine comics run, Silverfox and Logan were in a relationship when Silverfox was killed by Sabretooth. This turned out to be a false memory from a memory implant given to him by the Weapon X program in Wolverine Volume 2, number 62. That issue also had a previous member of the Team X dying, leading to questions about Wolverine's past and conflicts with Sabretooth. So this movie definitely drew inspiration from it. Silverfox was eventually killed by Sabretooth for real though, and Wolverine buried her by their cabin in the Canadian Rockies. In the comics, she had retractable claws and the ability to heal, although not as well as Wolverine. This movie decided to give her more unique powers. Chris Bradley now works at a carnival. This may have been inspired by the Blob's original appearance all the way back in Uncanny X-Men number 3. The Blob originally worked at a carnival where he used to challenge carnival goers to try to move him, and he would use his powers to resist. Bradley does something similar here, and a light bulb on it. His room and his trailer is filled with electrical toys that he can play with. These are all real vintage toys. There's a robot Lilliput, a 1950s Charlie Weaver bartender toy, there's a cymbal monkey, and I love how when Victor enters, his head brushes against the light bulbs hanging from the ceiling. It's a great visual reminder just how much bigger he is than Bradley, and whereas a carnival goer from earlier dropped the light bulb when it got too hot, Victor hangs on to this one. On Bradley's screams, all the power at the carnival goes out, showing that he was really powering the whole thing. Logan wakes up from a nightmare with his claws out, similar to the first X-Men film when he stabbed Rogue Rogue, although here, his claws only scratch Kayla. In X-Men, he was having nightmares about his Weapon X procedure. This makes it clear that he had a tortured mind long before he was experimented on. There's a lot of like Wolverine screaming up at the sky in this movie. Director Gavin Hood wanted to give the character PTSD from his war days, but Fox thought that that might be too heavy. When Stryker shows up at Logan's job, Agent Zero mocks him for making $18,500 a year, which at the end of the 70s would amount to about $77,600 today. And that's really not that bad. Stryker goes right into manipulation mode.
Bradley was killed 3 days ago. Wait, before that, I believe that someone is hunting down our old team.
At this point, Wade is already being turned into Deadpool somewhere in the lab, right? So Stryker is lying on so many levels. It's never really clear why he had Victor kill Bradley, since his power is cool, but by no means necessary to give to Deadpool. So I'm guessing he did it just to be able to tell James he's dead. I mean, maybe Deadpool has like electric current manipulation powers. We just don't see him use them. On the way home, unbeknownst to Logan, Silver Fox uses her powers to defuse a tense situation with this douchebag. She has the ability of tacto-hypnosis, meaning she can hypnotize anyone she touches. There's a kind of dreamy, mysterious musical cue
that's
that
like the
plays
other
when she's touching
girl.
this guy.
What's the damn girl name?
I know. Big temper too.
Damn, what's her name?
So please let us pass.
Fuck, forgot her name.
She's touching Logan too in the scene, but she's definitely refusing to influence him in the same way because, as she says, he was the one who decided to get out of the car. She tells him this story about the moon.
The chick from Guardians of the Galaxy. Who's the chick from Guardians of the fucking Galaxy? Damn, what is her name? And she's on the game. I can't remember her fucking name. Oh my god. That's crazy. I cannot remember her fucking name. Mantis! Yes! Mantis. I was literally about to Google it. I'm like, what the fuck?
His name was Kwekuhatsu, and they lived in the spirit world together.
Yeah, her.
That's a true story.
She goes on to say that Kwekuhatsu
Very
and the
similar
moon would
powers.
wander the skies together, but another spirit, a trickster, was jealous and tricked Kwekuhatsu, which she says translates to the Wolverine.
But she took on like their emotions as well. So that's it's pretty much what a empath is. I'm an empath.
Tricking them into leaving the spirit world forever, and every night he looks up at the moon and howls and can never touch her again. This is actually based on a real Native American legend. In the comics, Silver Fox is a member of the Blackfoot tribe. This story has several parallels to the movie, both the he could never touch her line because Silver Fox's powers come from touch, and Logan howling at the sky in the next scene when he finds her body and assumes she's dead.
They're bringing her.
And this is a story that inspires him to get Wolverine on his name tags.
I
I think we can admit, in retrospect, it's not great that Logan mispronounces it by referencing the Beatles' Cuckoo, and he takes an animal from this legend to inspire his moniker. But, you know, it was 2009. And even in 2024, we're only now getting, like, Cohorty and What If in Echo, but in a series that Disney still had not enough faith in, so that they butchered it into a Kingpin show. But it is interesting to note that we're just led to believe that Kayla is killed, but of course we don't actually see her get clawed. And notice how she even has just this look of resignation on her face when her car pulls up to Victor. Logan catches up to Victor, scratching a comedian Smiley into the wood of the bar, and they fight. Victor throws Logan into the way of a moving truck, and that truck just hits him and keeps right on trucking. Like, dude doesn't even pause. I guess he's on a schedule. Logan sees Stryker at the hospital.
Why didn't you tell me it was Victor? I didn't know. I swear on my son's life, I done something.
In X2, we actually saw that Stryker's son means nothing to him. So obviously this is a false promise. He's using his son for horrible things. Logan agrees to undergo the Weapon X procedure to make himself into more of a weapon to get his revenge on Sabretooth. And this origin is pretty different from the comics. In the comics, Stryker was really never part of the Weapon X program, and
So
Wolverine
this is
was
like part of his
abducted into
plan,
it as
like the
opposed to
whole time.
volunteering for it. Stryker says,
I can't put Victor down myself, Logan. To kill him, I'm gonna have to embrace the other side. Become the animal.
several times throughout the film, Silver Fox tells Logan that he's not an animal, so once again, we get these two warring sides within him. Right now, he's choosing the animal. Stryker explains to the generals that the X in Weapon X is for the Roman numeral 10. In the comics, Captain America was Weapon 1. Logan's transformation scene bears a lot of similarities to Steve Rogers undergoing the Super Soldier Serum procedure that turns him into Captain America. The other weapons in this lineage are Brute Force as Weapon 2, which is a collection of augmented animals, including a squirrel with Wolverine claws. It'd be hilarious for those guys to show up in Deadpool 3. Weapon 3 was Harry
Right,
Heiser,
those
aka aka
people
Skinless
were
Man.
on
Weapon 4 was Man-Thing, who we
Guardians
just saw
of the
in Werewolf by
Galaxy.
Night in the MCU. Weapon 5 is Project Venom. Weapon 6 is Luke Cage, who is now technically part of the MCU. Weapon 7 is Frank Simpson, aka Nuke, who, based on his involvement in the Jessica Jones series, is also technically part of the MCU. And Weapons 8 and 9 were projects that created sleeper assassins. And then, of course, we meet Weapon 11, Deadpool, in this movie. The doctor performing the procedure is Carol Frost. She was created for this film, but it's unclear if she's supposed to have any relation to Emma Frost. And Emma does show up later in this movie that has the same diamond hard skin as Emma Frost does in X-Men First Class, but this character is Kayla's sister named Emma Silverfox. Although it seems like at one point they were supposed to be the same person, right? This is totally Emma Frost's power set. Producer Lauren Schuler Donner later said that the Emma at the end of this film isn't Emma Frost, but I think they just didn't want to commit to this person being Emma Frost because Matthew Vaughn was at the same time developing X-Men First Class, where January Jones plays a version of Emma Frost in the 1960s. Either way, it's confusing. The shots of Wolverine in the pod as the adamantium bonds to him is reminiscent of the comic art of Marvel Presents Weapon X comics, which depict the same moment. During the procedure, he flashes back through his life all the moments we've already seen, including an ending on Kayla.
I love you.
You're not an animal.
He is doing what the doctor told him to do, to hold on to the reason he's doing this, even as the pain becomes unbearable. Even though he's just had a hell of a time, Logan's extra sensitive hearing kicks in.
Are we taking him to the island?
The island? No. Bonding works. We'll use his DNA for the 11.
Erase his memory.
Upon his escape, he carves what letter into the door with his claws? X! And then he fugitive jumps off the waterfall. Naked Logan runs to a barn belonging to this elderly couple, Travis and Heather Hudson. They are a reference to Vindicator and Guardian, two members of Alpha Flight, a Canadian superhero group who Wolverine allies with at one point. And since this is a movie executive produced by Lauren Schuler Donner and Richard Donner, doesn't it kind of feel like Jonathan and Martha Kent driving back to their farm? The sticker on their truck reads, "Not all who wander are lost." This is a quote from J.R.R. Tolkien's Fellowship of the Ring from the Riddle of Aragorn, a character who bears more than a few similarities to Wolverine, but it also reminds us of the quote from Charles Xavier in Days of Future Past that later gets echoed in Multiverse of Madness.
Just because someone stumbles, loses their way, it doesn't mean they're lost forever.
Just because someone stumbles and loses their way doesn't mean they're lost forever.
In the bathroom, Logan
I was gonna
examines his
say
new
that
adamantium
line.
claws, and this is where the movie got a lot of flack because they just do not
So
look as
much.
good here as they did in the previous three films, despite the fact that the CGI technology was totally advanced at this point. But in the first three, they were shinier, they were often practical, and you could see reflections of the images in them as he moved, making them feel more authentic and real. Here, they just kind of look flat, they almost look like styrofoam, and they look like a video game. There are a lot of threads online
does,
trying to figure
kind
out
of.
why exactly they look this bad, but no one's come to a consensus. It likely just came down to the fact that the VFX team didn't have enough time or money. But from my view, it really comes down to the two things I mentioned in the Last Stand breakdown: context and character. Notice how his claws now snicked up from the bottom of the frame and they are visually detached from the skin of his knuckles. Whereas in the first X-Men, the first time we see them, they are piercing through the knuckle skin. And shortly after this, we hear how Logan talks about how it hurts every time. But in this movie, it doesn't really seem like they hurt him. They're just kind of like a visual curiosity. He sparks them together like a kid playing with flint and steel or matches. And then we get the slapstick humor of him slicing the sink and the pipes, and it just kind of feels like Peter Parker in the first Spider-Man film, splooging webs all over his bedroom. Like Logan screaming in pain at the Alkali Lake lab and then fighting his way free. That should have been enough of a Powers origin story. This bathroom scene is just kind of goofy and comedic, and it's really just not who Logan is. And Travis is one who gives Logan his son's jacket. This is the same jacket that we saw him wearing
like,
in the
"That
first
scene
few
was
scenes of the
goofy."
original X-Men film, and the stripes on the arms are reminiscent of his original costume in the comics. We never find out what happened to the Hudson's son, and we're never gonna either, because right after this touching moment, Agent Zero murders them both, and it is awful. Now, we gotta talk about the second most insane sequence of this film: Wolverine facing down Agent Zero's helicopter and avenging his Canadian brethren. And I just love how Logan is using his new claws in this scene. He drags them in the dirt for like a quick turn on his motorcycle, and then he uses them in this joust method to kind of lance the side of the armored car to send it flipping. And then he leaps from the armored car, that explodes, and he flies, physics be damned, directly into the helicopter rotors, and then claws the blades to send the helicopter crashing. And then the whole scene ends with him slow motion walking away from the thing as it explodes behind him. I mean, come on, it's 2009. At least when Iron Man did this, he was like 100 yards away from that tank, and he was armored. But really my issue with this sequence is that Wolverine is essentially fastball specialing himself. What makes him going airborne so fun is that he needs someone else to throw him, like Colossus. It's really the same joke in Two Towers of Gimli quietly telling Aragorn, "Cost me," followed by, "Don't tell the elf." So the fact that Logan is now just doing all of this alone is just
So
kind of,
these
I
bots,
guess, this
what the
movie's
heck?
statement on how Weapon X turned him into a one-man army, just a pure demonstration of strength. We don't really learn anything new about him as a character other than, yeah, he was strong. And I guess there's a time of his life where he didn't need the X-Men. Which is why it's so weird in this movie that we get origin stories of other X-Men, like Cyclops. He's given something of an origin story in this movie, refusing to take his sunglasses off, getting a headache during Spanish class, when they're trying to conjugate the verb hablar, which is to talk. Perhaps these headaches are actually coming from Charles Xavier. They talk to this young mutant to warn him of Victor Creed coming for him, because we learn in Logan, these kind of psionic brainwaves are what caused most of the X-Men to die. Now, while Logan's memory is wiped in this movie by the magic adamantium bullet, it is implied that this young Scott Summers would grow up to be James Marsden Cyclops, who, remember, fights Sabretooth in the first X-Men film. Whether either of them would remember their past in the early 80s doesn't come up. At the Spectre boxing gym, Logan has a little reunion with John Wraith and Fred Dukes,
not remember that part at all. Oh my god.
Wearing a Save the Whale shirt while drinking a Slurpee. Behind the ring is a sign that reads bantamweight. That's between flyweight and featherweight, or between 112 and 118 pounds. And it lists two fighters, Ray Perez and Troy Walters, both names of real boxers, though as far as I can tell, they never fought each other. This scene of Logan in the ring with Dukes calls back to the Blob's comic book introduction. He invited people to try to move him and no one could make him budge, except Wolverine is just built differently and takes advantage of his new adamantium skeleton. Wolverine finds out that Victor and Stryker have been working together this whole time, and this whole thing was a long con to get him to agree to be part of the Weapon X experiment.
Right.
Stryker on the island, they run it together.
Victor will be with Stryker?
Yeah. You didn't know that?
Just like in the first X film, we get a point of view shot of Logan's claws coming straight out. And on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, we finally get to see Gambit, Remy LeBeau, played by Taylor Kitsch, who, as the star of Friday Night Lights in the late aughts, was supposed to be the big new star in Hollywood in movies like John Carter. And you know what? I miss this guy. Gambit was planned to make appearances
John Carter
in the
was
previous
so
X-Men
good.
films, but was
Oh my
ultimately
god.
always left out. And then after this, the Channing Tatum spin-off movie was shelved. It's kind of a bummer. Kitsch rocks in this movie. And at the table, real poker player Daniel Negreanu cameos playing against Gambit. In a deleted scene, Victor is able to track Logan and Wraith to New Orleans, presumably because he beat it out of the Blob.
He'll be out of the equation in 24 hours.
Can you guarantee that?
Oh, yes, sir.
How?
Because
I
I
like
know
the
where he's
quality.
going.
Right before Victor kills Wraith, when Wraith teleports, you can see his skeleton coming into place first, and then his skin covers it a split second later. It's a really weird but really cool effect. And then Victor collects Wraith's DNA for Deadpool. And I like the steps that they make in this movie to make the teleportation of Wraith different than the teleportation of BAMF Nightcrawler. The Nightcrawler one is smokier because he's going through the Brimstone dimension, but Wraith doesn't teleport the same way. Victor tells Logan,
Tell me something, Jimmy. Do you even know how to kill me?
I'm gonna cut your goddamn head off.
in the comics, Wolverine actually does kill Sabretooth by cutting his head off. Gambit gets between the brothers with his charged bow staff, and he does a similar move with it here that Ray Park did as Toad with the pipe in the first X-Men film. Then Wolverine immediately calls back the move he did in the first X-Men film, flipping someone off using the middle adamantium claw.
It's a nice stick.
I don't know the show. Like,
I tried everything. Coffee, Pomodoro, and binaural beats. But nothing stuck until I tried this.
I mean, I do, but I just don't remember like a lot of it.
A younger version of Stryker's son, Jason Stryker, who we saw in X2. Jason
now he had his ass froze.
Mastermind of the comics who could control and alter minds, and here, as
worst father ever.
Differently colored eyes. Stryker had brought him to Xavier's school in the hopes that he could cure him, but this would be after he left the school and after his wife took her own life with the power drill. Now there are more mutants frozen in the other tanks, but we can't really see them as well. General Mudson checks out Weapon 11, aka Deadpool.
All their strengths, none of their weaknesses.
In Marvel lore, this is actually how a half-mutant, half-vampire Blade is described.
We got the best of both worlds. All our strengths, none of our weaknesses.
But yes, this is nothing like Deadpool's origin story in the comics. It does involve the Weapon X program, but it's more faithfully adapted in the 2016 Deadpool film. Gambit flies Logan as Stryker.
3 Mile Island. Hide in plain sight. No one's gonna snoop around a nuclear reactor. They think it's gonna turn them into freaks.
In 2013's The Wolverine, Logan actually survives.
But his accent does not match up with
like many
how
soldiers and Marines who fought in Europe during World War II. Our man relocated to the Pacific Theater at the worst possible time. So Logan jumps out of this plane without a parachute, just like Captain America does in The Winter Soldier. Logan looks much less graceful though. He hits the water and he skids along it like a rock. And we get the reveal that Kayla is still alive and that she is a mutant. And Logan is devastated. But Stryker was manipulating her too. Her sister was one of the mutants he kidnapped, and he held that over Kayla to get her to do what he wanted. A deleted scene would have shown Stryker asking Logan to let him wipe his memory to forget about Kayla and all the other horrible things that had happened in his life, and Logan agreeing. But that was ultimately left out because it felt too out of character for Logan to let Stryker do that to him. Logan walks away, but comes back when he hears Kayla's truly horrifying scream. And I think that one of the reasons he was so protective of Rogue and X-Men was that she
I
reminded him
know,
on a
that bitch
subconscious
faking it
level
still.
of Kayla. Both their powers rely on human touch. Kayla tells the story of how the Wolverine can never touch the moon, and Rogue can never get close to or touch anyone she cares about. And both women were manipulated by powerful men for their own means. The relationship with Rogue was obviously meant to be like a big brother, little sister, but when vulnerable women are put in harm's way, Logan really loses his damn mind. Logan and Victor fight again, but Logan walks away because he's not an animal. Kayla and Logan free the other mutants in Stryker's prison, keeping in mind that some of this movie gets retconned later, and the timeline doesn't really make sense once First Class is in the mix. Here are the mutants we see. The red-haired mutant with the Hannibal Lecter type mask over his mouth is presumably Sean Cassidy, aka Banshee. He shows up in First Class. Some folks claim that this is supposed to be the mutant Chamber, but Chamber's powers come from his chest, not his mouth, so that really wouldn't make that much sense. This character is not named in the credits, so I think this is supposed to be Banshee, but when Banshee appeared in First Class, they kind of retconned or ignored this. The kid with the lizard tongue and the amphibious eyes is presumably young Mortimer Toynbee, aka Toad. The girl with the freezing powers in a cell with frost and icicles is likely Ice Princess. The kid who looks like he's causing a tornado in a cell is Riptide. He also shows up in First Class. The mutant who's tied up trying to break free is Peter Maximoff, Quicksilver. You can see his white hair there. He will be played by Evan Peters in Days of Future Past, and the MCU version is played by Aaron Taylor Johnson in Age of Ultron. There's a mutant with blue and purple streaks in her hair, whom people assumed was Psylocke. There's two mutant twins, not sure about them. And of course, there's Scott Summers and Kayla's sister, Emma Silverfox, with the diamond skin, because yeah, she's pretty much Emma Frost in this movie. Weapon 11 blocks the mutants from escaping, and we get our first real look at the Deadpool design. Alec Gillis and Tom Woodruff Jr.
I do not remember
These
this
are the guys
shit.
who created this Deadpool look. Talked about the design that at the time was much maligned by fans.
So if you're looking at him as Deadpool, I can understand why you'd be disappointed. He doesn't have the costume. He's not that character that you know and love from the comic books. What the studio was trying to do, I think, was set up the character of Deadpool for the future. This is sort of a pre-Deadpool.
Pre-Deadpool, yeah.
You know, him to look like a patient, like a sort of a patient / victim of this scientific process.
And to be fair to them, they were just doing their job and they're trying to carry out the studio's vision. Weapon 11 has adamantium swords that retract into his arms. Much has been made about the fact that adamantium doesn't bend. Given the length of these swords, he wouldn't have been able to bend his arms, but I guess we chalk that up to everyone just thinking arm swords would look cool and not worrying about the logistics. Weapon 11 has Logan's healing ability, John Grace's power of teleportation, Scott Summers' optic blasts, and when he uses his optic blasts, the skin around his eyes chars in a diamond pattern, the same kind of pattern that Deadpool wears on his mask in the comics. Of course, this version of Deadpool would lead Ryan Reynolds to reconceive the character in his own films with an impressive fan campaign and a viral proof of concept video, and I would argue that Deadpool film would not have been successful if this one didn't go so poorly. Of course, he has never shied away from this controversial design.
What are you doing us all a favor and shut the f*** up? Also, your pretty mouth shut.
They have embraced this history so much that this initial moment when Logan and Weapon 11 come face to face would later be revisited and parodied in the post-credit montage of Deadpool 2 in 2018, when Deadpool time travels back to this moment to kill his alternate self in a tease that will almost certainly set up their reunion in Deadpool 3.
One day, your old pal Wade's gonna ask you to get back in the saddle again. When he does, say yes.
Charles Xavier, meanwhile, communicates with Scott telepathically, setting up his uncredited cameo at the end of the film. Victor saves Logan and they fight Weapon 11 together back to back as they were before, and they decapitate Weapon 11, whose severed head continues to fire an optic blast that destroys the cooling tower. I mean, it's crazy, but I gotta love it. Stryker loads up a few adamantium bullets into his gun, knowing that they won't kill Logan, but also that if he shoots him in the head, his memories won't grow back. It's very silly. In the comic,
so why
origin,
he didn't
Wolverine
really
loses
have
his memory temporarily, but this is due
memories.
to his healing powers protecting him from mental stress. And that, I believe, would have been a much cooler explanation, because our memories do work that way. Our memories will warp and erase themselves in ways that will make us stronger in the present. This is just a natural biological and psychological function that we all go through, and you can imagine Wolverine having a far more regenerative healing form of it. So Kayla dies, for real this time, but not before using her powers on Stryker to make him point his gun at himself, like Magneto and the cops in the first film.
I should make you pull the trigger, but that would make us no better than you. Throw the gun away, turn around, walk until your feet bleed, and then keep walking.
Oh my god, this is like some shit Kilgrave will do in Jessica Jones, or that character in Gen V does. That's accidentally to her brother. In the mid-credits scene, we catch up with Stryker as he is doing exactly this, but he gets arrested for questioning over General Munson. I'm not sure why he's able to stop and turn around, and it also really isn't clear how he avoids blame for this in between this movie and his appearance in X2. And Patrick Stewart makes his big cameo. He is de-aged again, less successfully than he is in The Last Stand, and even though that scene was set in 1985 or 1986, this would just be a few years before that in the early 80s. They could have used literally the same design, or maybe just not shown the character's head and just used Patrick Stewart's iconic voice. It's clear that they just did not have the same budget for this movie, but look closely at this whole scene. The entire scene with the helicopter and the kids running up in that background, all of this is with CGI and VFX, and it's very clearly all rushed, and it's just something artificial about it. Now, X-Men First Class would establish that Charles Xavier loses his ability to walk years earlier, but Days of Future Past established that he could walk again using a serum during the 1970s. Either way, this timeline would get retconned so that Charles looked exactly like James McAvoy during the 70s and the 1980s. In the post-credit scene, Weapon 11 grabs his own decapitated head from the rubble. So the skin around his mouth is now open, and he shushes us? God. Why does he do that? I don't know. I suppose they wanted the merc with the mouth to finally have a mouth, and to know when and when not to use it, but what they intended his art to be from this point forward isn't exactly clear. On the X-Men Origins Wolverine DVD, there is an alternate post-credit scene that shows Logan drinking in a bar in Japan. This would be a setup to 2013's The Wolverine, directed by James Mangold, which is set in Japan. So next week will be our breakdown of X-Men First Class. But first, some Deadpool 3 spoilers in the Danger Room. So let's talk about Wade and Logan. These two...
Okay, we so in the video right there. So that ends that one. And then, yeah, next week is First Class. I love the First Class movie. I thought it was pretty good. Pretty good.